In preparation for Netflix's Sister Death, I rewatched Veronica from 2017. The two movies share some elements, and I wanted to see if I could still be freaked out by this supernatural horror. The good news is that it still holds up. So let's summon some spirits and dive in. In Madrid in 1991, a teen girl finds herself besieged by an evil supernatural force after she plays with a Ouija with two classmates. I think probably the most unsettling thing about this movie is that it's based on actual events. I'm sure some of it, if maybe not most, is exaggerated for the screen, but the general premise of a 15-year-old girl being possessed by a malevolent spirit after messing around with a Ouija board, that's disturbing and freaky. We meet Veronica, played by Sandra Escacena, who, by the way, that is her first role. She's taking care of her young siblings as her mom works long hours just to provide for them. Now, one day at school during a solar eclipse, Veronica and her two friends sneak into the basement of their school to ideally make contact with Veronica's dead father. That's when everything goes seriously downhill. And because of some things that go wonky, Veronica finds herself followed and even oppressed by some unseen entity. She has these tremendous nightmares. Weird occurrences start happening at her home and even to her siblings, and then Veronica herself just begins to find bruises on her body. This movie doesn't have a slow burn element to it. We pretty much are thrown right into the creepiness, even if we don't totally have an idea of what's fully at play at the start. The imagery that's utilized in this, it's just simply not okay. I mean, most times, if we're shown anything at all, there are shadowy figures that creep along walls or across windows, just instilling a large sense of foreboding and dread simply by the slow-moving visuals. There are more than a few times when we get to witness more than just a shadow, and the costuming and makeup, they're effective in building out some massive nope moments. And the stalking element, it's haunting and can add a very relatable notion to the storytelling. I mean, most of us at some point or another have had that feeling that somebody's following us, even if they weren't. The shadowy figures here, they reinforce this feeling and make it 1,000 times worse because we can't always see where they went. Now, I think what helps to make this story both engaging and concerning is that we're watching several children undergo this experience. Even Veronica, despite being a teenager, she's vulnerable, just like her brother and sisters. So there's instantly a large amount of anxiety surrounding them being at home alone with potentially these demonic forces coming after them. Now, also, the innocence of the younger kids makes the story all the more harrowing, especially when we witness them endure things that would make most of us wet the bed. The sound design is excellent in this, using a lot of silence at key moments to drive up the discomfort, and then contrast that with loud pop and rock songs that work to serve as the lead up to something horrible. The pacing, it's also outstanding, taking just a short amount of time to introduce us to Veronica and her family before then diving into the meat of the story. But this doesn't rush the progression. We watch each day play out for her with this agonizing tension just because each new moment introduces compounding fear and suspense. Now, something that's not unique, but this movie uses to kick off the story, is that we see the ending events first and then are taken back to when it all started to watch the story build. It's very effective, especially because what we're shown in the opening is vague and it's poorly designed on purpose to create space for the story to increase its horror naturally. And then to add to the mounting tension, there's a growing isolation that Veronica experiences, making her situation even more dreadful. Her friends, who were there when playing with the Ouija, they pretty much ghost her, leaving her to fend for herself and work the puzzle of what happened to her on her own. They're crap friends, but knowing that doesn't help Veronica's situation. But it creates the plot complication that allows her to spiral down into fear and depression. Now, a lot of the same tropes are used to create atmosphere as in other possession-type horrors. This one, though, creates an environment that feels natural and less staged, even though there are very rote elements. At one point, Veronica's in a trance. She's silent, but not in control of her body. This isn't anything unique in this genre of storytelling. There's also the use of candles to illuminate a room when the power gets cut, allowing for them to suddenly and mysteriously extinguish. And while the narrative employs many similar and even overused scenarios to create a mood, this one does so in an enveloping way. And while I was watching, the scenes didn't come across as boring or unoriginal, but instead were working hand in hand with the performances to establish an ominous tone. There's also a level of predictability to the trajectory of the story, especially because of what we're shown in the opening scene. And even though that beginning is vague, once Veronica messes with the Ouija and visions start appearing, the way this is going to play out, it's fairly obvious. Funny enough, though, I was still riveted despite the obviousness. I think a lot of that is because I'm hoping against what's happening on screen so that something positive is redeemed rather than a terrible outcome that appears to be on the way. And despite these shortcomings, the narrative efficiently and effectively continues to build on the anxious tension so that the torment is just unrelenting. And as the story reaches its climax, we can feel that same oppressive force that's overwhelming Veronica, leading to just this claustrophobic and hopeless emotion. This is certainly one of the better executed supernatural possession movies, using its hour and 45 minutes to craft a haunting tale with lasting effects. And as the film concludes, we're shown slow and quiet actions by the lead detective, followed by a postscript on the screen. And this takes what we just witnessed and cements it as one of the most effective and believable accounts of demonic occupation. So overall, Veronica works to quickly establish a dreadful atmosphere and then manages to grow that into a hauntingly memorable possession tale. The acting is both convincing and engaging from newcomer Sandra Escacena, capturing the curiosity and innocence of a teenager while also thrusting her into horrifying scenarios that are based in truth. With a driving but unrushed pace, the narrative pulls us into the terrors, complete with shadowy things that go bump in the night and menacing forces that are nothing short of evil. There's no sex, some brief nudity, some profanity, and some violence. I give Veronica 4.5 out of 5 couches. So what's a possession type movie that's good? Let me know your recommendations in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.